Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining the seventh session of the Sustainability Insight. Firstly, I would like to introduce our organizing team from UNESCO Jakarta. My name is Sachi Suzuki, JFIT coordinator, and here Vidyani Ahmad, Gani Mulia, and Chiptayama Sanda from their office. Today we are going to focus on the post-COVID climate justice, reaching the unreachable. We proudly present Professor Shabazz Khan, the Director of UNESCO Regional Science Bureau for Asia and the Pacific as a moderator, and Dr. Ram Buji, CEO and Program Director, Mobius Foundation India as our guest speaker. We're ready to take your questions through the Q&A box and Facebook page, and you are invited to fill the attendance list, which we will share during the webinar. This is required especially if you would like to receive the e-certificate. Professor Shabazz, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Dr. Sachi. We are very lucky to have with us Dr. Ram Buj, a long-term friend, a UNESCO colleague who has done many interesting things related to climate change, to environment, to the greater areas of science. And now he is the CEO of a foundation, Mobius Foundation. We will hear more about that. Today, we are going to focus on a topic which is of great importance for everyone, and especially now with the challenges faced by COVID, the challenges faced long term in terms of climate change, and the role of UNESCO sites, the work which we have been doing under the Japan Fund's interest. So we will be exploring these areas with Dr. Ram Buj. To begin with, dear Dr. Ram Buj, it has been a very interesting journey of life where you have played a very important role from the natural sciences all the way to linking with the social sciences to the sustainability concepts, linking with people like myself and with many others. You have touched many lives, and we have been to a few places which we will explore today where we have learned many things. But before we start, can I request you to give us an idea about this term, climate justice, and also for those colleagues who may not be that familiar with climate change, what do we mean by climate change? What do we mean by climate justice? Is this the right terminology to be used? And also, please link with the other part of the topic, reaching the unreachable. Who are the unreachable? So over to you, Ram Buj.
Thank you very much, Professor Shabazz. In fact, it's a great pleasure to be on this very important forum, Sustainability Insight. Congratulations to your leadership and to the joint endeavor of all your team. Very important, very timely, these sustainability topics that you are taking up. And I'm happy that today's topic, climate justice, is so important, uh, not only in COVID times, because we need more justice, but also we need justice in terms of the environmental fairness, the climate, and in many aspects. So, climate justice, to be fair enough, it's a form of environmental justice, we can say. I remember in 2002, I was at the Johannesburg attending the World Summit on Sustainable Development, WSST, and was in a forum for the environmental justices. And we were deliberating for almost a week about various aspects of those, because Johannesburg Forum was basically for the social sciences. Environment at that time was at the forefront, but it was first time that the social pillar, like sustainability, has three pillars: environment, economics, and society. So society pillar was being focused in Johannesburg, and environmental justice was one of the pillars. Uh, as we know, climate change, it impacts not equally or fairly rich or poor, women, men, older and younger generation, those who are poor, those who are underprivileged, they are more vulnerable. So in that context, climate justice is a form of environmental justice for the fair treatment of all people equally and equitably without any discrimination, and it favors policies and programs that address climate change as well as the systems
Mhm.
that creates climate change and also perpetuate discrimination. So climate justice in that way, it provides basis for an ethical and social dimension rather than purely scientific, environmental or physical nature of climate change,
Mhm.
the climate crisis.
So let's
And
explore, Dr. Rambu, let's explore this concept with unreachable. So, as you've described, there are many people who are at the receiving end of the climate change, but they may not have the ability to be able to be heard, to be considered. But also, environment itself is usually unreachable. So, can you give us some ideas from your experience? These challenges both for the people as well as for the environment and for those communities who are at the receiving end, but they may not have a say in terms of resolving these challenges.
uh, I think you rightly say that those who bear the brunt of climate impacts are those who are vulnerable, those who cannot be reached out,
Mm.
unreached or unreachable. And mostly we can see the indigenous people, the tribal communities, those living in forests, forest dwellers, in mountains, in islands, in all those remote areas, living, of course, they live in harmony with nature. But the
Mm.
problem is currently nature is being assaulted on many fronts. So all those people, they are poor. In that category, we have certain regions. We can, like I already mentioned about these, what we call as SIDS, those small island states, developing states, the island nations. Africa, where is it's chronically underdeveloped. There are many least developing countries, what we call as LDCs. So
Mm.
these areas deserve special mention in terms of climate justice because reaching out to them through providing them justice in the climate emergency is must be the first task.
Very good. So, thank you very much for bringing now the knowledge of one is the climate justice, which is not just about the natural sciences only, but understanding the people dimension, the ethical dimensions, the environment, which is normally a neglected stakeholder as well. So, bringing all those unreachable. So, thank you very much. You have given us, Dr. Rambuj, a very interesting concept also the small islands and developing states. And from your work, I know you have worked on one of these SIDS, as we call them, called Maldives. And you have played a very important role for Maldives to become what we call within the UNESCO system a biosphere reserve. So, can you please relate your experience with the Maldives now and what is so important for them to become a model for considering all those dimensions?
Uh, yeah, this is very interesting question, I would say, Professor. Maldives is one country which is just a meter, you can say, above the sea level. So it's around 1000, 1150 to be precise, small islands, mainly atolls in the Indian Ocean. And the government is it's afraid of the global warming consequences, particularly sea level rise, that this country will become non-existent in case we do not take action. So it's a very, very sensitive island nation. You must have heard the news that their cabinet met underwater inside the sea, one of their cabinet, just to attract the world's attention. Uh, we were working involved with the Maldives in terms of course, JEFIT program was there in for the building in country capacity in science education with focus on climate change education. But simultaneously, there was effort to have a biosphere reserve. As you rightly said, biosphere reserves are the right places for combining the sustainable development as well as the conservation, both together. It's a kind of, you can say, doing the environmental justice with the communities, because it's a biosphere reserve,
Good.
man as well as the environment. So that, from the justice point of view, this was a great decision. Government of Maldives declared one of their very important atolls as a biosphere, that is called as Ba Atoll.
Wow.
And the government was so much impressed that they have now pledged to declare the whole island nation as a biosphere reserve in next 10 years. As a climate commitment, you can say the national determined contribution NDCs towards the Paris Agreement.
That's really wonderful. So this gives an example that programs like the Man and Biosphere program, they can help us consider these important environmental justice, climate justice dimensions and take the whole society forward to be inclusive of all those ideas. And I'm also very pleased to know that Japan Fund interests were useful to continue to work in this area. Let's focus now, next step on it, the education element. And education for sustainable development is very important, and global citizenship education is very important for making sure people are aware about these challenges and they are aware about their rights and they understand their own role and the role of different players. Can you please give us an idea about education for sustainable development, how it can link with environmental justice, climate justice, and what can be done? And in your present role, you are also promoting education for sustainable development.
Yes, in my present role with the Mobius Foundation, uh, in fact, the first thing that I did was to organize an international conference on sustainability education. And there were close to 3 dozen, to be precise, partners, including 5 UN agencies, including UNESCO, UNEP, UNFCCC, many others, and some of the prominent ESD organizations. Uh, I think this is so important, as we all know that education we always call is a key to sustainability. And that is why when we talk about environmental justice or climate justice, it is so important. And UNESCO, in fact, the which is the lead agency for ESD in the UN system, has already identified climate change as the priority area for ESD. Climate change and disaster risk reduction (DRR). These are so important. So in that way, the climate justice is about educating the policymakers particularly. Of course, all the stakeholders need to be educated about the sustainability principles, how we can, it's a intergenerational equity, what we call the whole, this Fridays for Future, the student movement led by Greta Thunberg, is about all about educating the people about sustainability, uh, bringing climate change legislations, enabling policies in various countries. So this is so important that everybody is now talking about ESD, and UNESCO has come out with ESD 2030. In
Yeah.
fact, when we call this year 2020 as year for the nature or the environment, one of the important announcements was to launch this ESD 2030 in June this year, and it has been postponed for the next year. So this is so significant in that respect.
So this is a very important part of enabling and empowering communities to know what is their role and how this climate justice can be promoted, as well as making sure that we become global citizens. Thank you very much for those insights. I remember when you were working in UNESCO, we brought together biosphere reserves, which is a very important part of the Man Biosphere program. These biosphere reserves, which are practical examples of sustainable development. We went to a place in Vietnam called Cat Ba, and we observed some very interesting things about how can people use their environment to promote livelihoods and fair and equitable use of resources, but they take care of their future, as you said, intragenerational and intergenerational equity. So can you please give us some of those ideas that when from the nations like, for example, Vietnam and others you have worked with, how these concepts can go all the way to the community level?
Yes, Professor, I think that was the highlight of our association, the MAP program and the Biosphere Reserves. So wonderful meetings we had uh, in various parts of South Asia, Southeast Asia, of course, entire Asia Pacific. By et al. I mentioned, but this Katba in Vietnam is such a wonderful, it's both World Heritage as well as a Biosphere Reserve. And how communities they are living their livelihood options are so sustainable in harmony with the environment. They have evolved a certain lifestyle without harming the environment and also conserving the resources. So that is one example. But Professor, you remember this whole network, the Asia Pacific network of biosphere reserves. I was coordinating the SACAM, South and Central Asia Map Network. And of course, all those networks you coordinated. And we evolved a common strategy of conservation linked sustainable development. And that was fed into the JEFIT and Malaysian Trust program in the overall this Asia Pacific science strategy. So basically, biosphere reserves they not only promote scientific understanding but also community involvement, because these are the community-led initiatives in buffer and transition areas of the biosphere reserves that are so important in bringing environmental and climate justice to the communities, because they are the part, the decision makers in a way, not only the participation, not that per se that okay, as a management decision they are part, but they are the decision makers in conservation. So it's a cooperative mechanism, which is such a great example in the world network of biosphere reserves.
Thank you very much. That's really very good example to quote. And there are so many good examples. So from the Japan Fund's interest, we have been bringing the best practices together for biosphere reserves, and your role is very much appreciated in that. So today, our colleagues, Dr. Sachi and Ms. Vivid will post those links in the Facebook page. But also, if you have questions, please bring those questions. Dr. Rambuj would be very happy to answer them. We will put those questions with your names and answers from Dr. Rambuj on our Facebook live page. So let's now, Dr. Rambuj, move to the next step. With this COVID situation, we have observed many things in our life have slowed down. Many people think that the environment has become better, maybe because there are not many planes which are going around, there are not many cars which are moving around. Maybe human activities have slowed down. But climate change is not something which can be fixed so quickly. There are many other functions which are also disturbed. Within these protected areas, people have to now resort to maybe local resources which can cause further damage to the environment. So can you please give us your view on uh, presently where we are going through post-COVID Build Back Better, and how climate justice, environmental justice, empowering people towards green recovery can become part of government plans?
Uh, yes, this is a very unprecedented situation. COVID has brought the whole world and impacting everything. And particularly when we talk about, like I said, the climate crisis has disproportionately impacted vulnerable sections of society and those who are unreachable. And COVID-19 is also doing the same. It's further exacerbating their vulnerabilities and also weakening the resilience and coping mechanisms. Uh, in fact, in many countries, there have been unprecedented lockdown. That has resulted in the migration. What we call in India, it was a huge problem. It's called reverse migration. From the urban centers, people flocking to their native places in the rural areas. They left those habitats because there was either a disaster or some climate impact. For the livelihoods, they migrated to the urban centers. But again, because of the COVID, there is a forced migration. So this becomes quite complicated how to bring justice in the era of COVID-19. Because this is an unprecedented situation. It's not a voluntary migration. It's involuntary environment induced migration, and we can call them that these are climate refugees in certain cases. One of the major areas that countries are now doing is the offering almost trillions of dollars globally as recovery packages. And I think one example was the European Union a few days, couple of days back. They announced one of the best recovery this package, where almost 10% is devoted towards climate impacts and the biodiversity and other environmental matters. Similarly, I think for the whole world, there is a chance that, of course, there have been slump in carbon emissions. Almost they say that around 8% reduction in carbon emissions, which is also required by the Paris Agreement and the special report on climate change last in 2018 IPCC observed. Uh, if this recovery packages, I think if there is mention about becoming carbon neutral, number one, and the other one, helping these the unreachable communities and the people. That will be, of course, many countries are doing working in that direction. But I think something sustainable, like during the earlier recession, there was Marshall Plan. Similarly, I think some global sustainability action plan for climate justice is the need of the hour.
So climate justice should be part of the discussions, the plans, and very importantly, we should not forget climate change is still a very big challenge for us. And sustainable development goals have been slowed down and there is economic recession. So we have to work together to make sure we reach all those unreachables. Let's focus now, Dr. Rambuj, on your advice for funds interest like Japan Fund Interest. You have given us examples of the biosphere reserves, the Maldives work which has been done. Then also you have played a role on our biotechnology school, which is for Asia Pacific, and you helped host it in New Delhi, and many colleagues have benefited from it. So your observations for these mechanisms like funds interest, where should we go next from where we have been, especially now with these new challenges, COVID, slowing down of SDGs, slowing down of economies, what role these areas can play?
Yeah, I think it's very important for UNESCO and JFIT to continue the good work that they have already been doing. But in the current the situation, we have the climate emergency, we had the COVID emergency already. So I think we need to provide more impetus to sustainable and nature positive education, particularly how these are linked with the health. and the environmental assets. In fact, this year's World Environment Day and the International Day of Biodiversity focused on the nature-based solutions. So I think the one focus that could be that our solutions are in nature. So some, and for the best example for nature-based solutions are the biosphere reserves. So strengthening that which is community-led and which can be a medium or source for further transmitting those benefits to the communities. That is one. The other one, as you mentioned about the cutting edge technologies like the centers of biotechnology, the UNESCO Category 2 Center in Regional Center in Biotechnology in India, where I was involved in this biotechnology ACR program, the capacity building. Last we did a workshop, and some 15 these biotechnology centers were present, and this center has taken up in building capacity on uh, every yearly basis. Every year they take some around 15, 16 international students to biotechnologies to build the capacities. So I think in for the climate change, biotechnology can play a major role where Jeffit is already into it by building the capacity. So that is one area. The other one is, of course, the small island developing states, those which are already impacted. Uh, there are community specific like Andaman's Sea. There are both Indonesia and Indian Andaman Island. There are those species which are endangered and threatened, and communities which need to be supported. So there are several examples that can be taken up under this project in future. And
Thank you very much. I have one last question, and I really like all your suggestions, Dr. Rambuj, that we need to take next steps. We shouldn't neglect all these challenges which are becoming bigger and becoming more intense. There is climate emergency, there is COVID emergency. So all of those need to be considered in planning as well as in implementation. We have many colleagues from universities joining us today. I see some interesting comments also from colleagues from ECO Science Foundation, Professor Somru, you know very well. I would like you to give your quick advice for this linkage between the universities, the United Nations system, and the sites. Because I think many times universities are missing this important link that they should be well founded within the areas where they are working. The students should take pride. They should become champions. They should take the leadership to make sure the climate justice is being done. So give us some ideas from your experience and what you're doing now. How can we have better, effective relationship between universities, sites, United Nations systems, NGOs working together?
I think Professor Shahbaz, this is the brilliant ideas. UNESCO biosphere reserves, they are the learning sites for sustainability. So in that sense, the universities, they can adopt respective biosphere reserves like as a support centers. UNESCO has already initiated a prize for the Young Scientist Award for the biosphere reserve, those who work in that area. And there is also the award for the scientists. I think it's Sultan Qaboos award. Uh, so similarly, regional level, uh, these universities, they can be associated with nearby biosphere reserves, and they can take in India what happens. Every biosphere reserve is associated with a supporting institution, and this institution is provided by the MAP committee support also to do targeted research. A lot of when I was there in UNESCO, we took a lot of interns who were involved with these biosphere reserves to produce a small thesis, some kind of quality work, and also for the not only the scientific research. I would say that those in the social sciences or legal the arena, they can also do the work in the social justice, environmental justice, climate justice, all those areas, because these areas, the biosphere reserves, they are, as I said, provide harmonious connection between people and the nature.
That's
So
one.
that is one area where, in fact, if we want, as per the Agenda 2030, which provides a framework to reaching out to unreached, so that no one is left behind. That way, universities must try to reach out to some of these remote areas. Of course, some of these areas may be far away from the universities, but still they should make a point to make connections with these wonderful sites.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rambuj. So this is all the time we have today, and we are very grateful for your insights. Let me try to summarize this wonderful conversation we have. So first of all, climate change is still an emergency. COVID is an emergency, and we need to carefully consider the social and ethical aspects, along with, of course, the science aspects and the governance aspects of how do we make sure that nobody is left behind? How do we make sure those people who have been unreachable, they are reached first? So that's a very big challenge for all organizations, including NGOs, where Dr. Rambuj is leading one of those NGOs and have played a role before in UNESCO. So we have to think beyond our own disciplines and where we are working. We have to link together and work together. That's very important. Also in this conversation, we have learned about what JFIT has been doing with the work which Dr. Rambuj has described to us, the biosphere reserves, a very important concept. Biosphere reserves as models for sustainable development, and Maldives as a nation, as a small island, becoming a whole biosphere reserve, and has been very successful in bringing all these aspects together, and has major challenges for climate change. As Dr. Rambuj told us, maybe the space for the sea level rise is not so big, maybe a meter or so, and we have to work on those emergency measures. Then we have also discussed today the need for building capacity in education for sustainable development. And for that, there are many publications which we will be able to share with you today. And inquiry-based science education, which was not discussed today, but previously with Dr. Somro and ECO Science Foundation, also our center, ISTIC in Malaysia is doing that. So we will post those links for you. Then also very importantly, with the COVID situation, the most vulnerable are those people who have lost their jobs, who are earning very little. And also the people who are living far away. How do we bring all of them forward and together? Lastly, very importantly, we need to have partnerships. And this partnership between university, the United Nations, the system, and also very importantly with the relevant government and all those people who are far away, how do we bring them together? Universities must take a role of leadership in these sites and create excitement for young people. Young people must take the lead in demanding, first of all, for climate justice by knowing what climate justice really means, what environmental justice means. How do we make sure that all those who are unheard are properly heard? And building back better must consider the green recovery part of it with the climate justice, local ownership, and making sure that we are moving to a future which should help us be more resilient and more sustainable. And those principles from different disciplines of social and natural sciences should come together. So Dr. Rambuj, we thank you for your wonderful contribution today. We look forward to continue to work with you. We will be taking the questions from the Q&A section, and we will give individual attention to every one of the questions. You will be responded on our Sustainability Insight page from Dr. Rambuj, and where I can respond, I will do so as well. And we will continue to link you with the relevant knowledge which has been developed under the Japan Fund's Interest program for the biosphere reserves, for the education for sustainable development, another area for insights into sustainability is the sustainability science itself. So we will certainly continue to provide all those links for free downloads. Thank you for listening today, for joining us today. Please keep your interest and many more exciting things will come. Over to you, dear Dr. Sachi.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Professor, for such a
Thank you very
wonderful
much, Dr. Rambu.
interaction.
We will continue. Dear
Thank you
Dr.
so much. Thank you so much, Professor Shabazz and Dr. Rambuji, and all participants who have joined this event. Please don't forget to fill the attendance list if you'd like to receive the e-certificate. And let me announce next session. Please do not miss upcoming MFIT Sustainability Insight Part 8 on 27th July with Dr. Farida Faisal. The title of the next session is Post-COVID Pathways for Real Gender Empowerment. For further information, we will update on our Facebook page. We wish you a good day and stay safe, and see you all soon in our next session.